So this morning we're starting a brand new sermon series called Family Ties. I'm really excited about this. And in the Family Ties idea, we're talking about what ties our families together in our home, but also in the church as well. A couple of quick quotes I want to give you on family ties. We've already gone over a key verse, Ephesians 4:32. George Burns said this. Good guy to quote on church service, right? Happiness is having a large, loving, caring, close-knit family in another city. That sounds like something that George Burns would say. How many of you can identify with that this morning? Okay. Sorry I couldn't find a picture of him without the cigar. It just seemed fitting. We got to have it in there. John Maxwell, a leadership guy in Christian circles, he says family and friendships are two of the greatest facilitators of happiness. Man, is that true? If you've got a close family around you and friends that can lift you up, it's one of the highest marks that we can have in our life. It's a facilitator of happiness. Good words from John Maxwell. Mark Twain, one of my favorite authors, he said this: when I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to be 21, I was astonished at how much he had learned in just 7 years. How many of you understand what he's talking about there? Parents just get smarter after you're out of the house. Did you read that? You read it twice. And but Mark Twain just has a way of saying things, and he's such an awesome author. If you look at your handout this morning, our text is 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 1 through 7. Here's our big idea. You say, Pastor, I haven't taken the time to study 1 Corinthians 13 in quite some time. That's okay. If you knew nothing else coming into here, here is the big idea from this text. Here's the overarching idea of this text. It's kind of wordy. I can't figure out how to make it simpler. Here's the wordiness of it. God values when we love each other more than when we complete actions without any love for each other. I know that's a bit wordy, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm going to say it again because the principle is there. That God values when we love each other, He values that more than when we complete actions without any love for each other. It's sort of like what we read in 1 Samuel, when Samuel says to obey is better than sacrifice. That's the principle in the Bible. It's better to be obedient to the Lord than to say, I'm going to live like the devil and put an extra $100 in the offering plate. God's not impressed with that. He wants your heart. The only way you can really impress God this morning is just fully surrendering to Him. The Bible says He's attracted to a broken and a contrite spirit, contrite heart. So our big idea is just God values when we love each other more than when we complete actions without any love for each other. Let's read in our Bibles 1 Corinthians chapter 13. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. This morning we're going to get overarching principles on love, and we'll start diving into specifics as we get going in our series. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and let's begin reading in verses number 1 and 2. Paul is saying, though I speak with tongues of men and of angels, and have not charity, I'm become as sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. What he's saying in verse 1 is, he says, listen, if I knew another language that only the angels and I could speak in, if I could speak all of the languages of the world, and I could impress people with my knowledge, and I could communicate in a spiritual way that nobody could even understand, and I have not charity, let me define charity as we get going. Charity is basically this: love in action. See, love is an abstract noun. I can't go to the store and buy a jar of love. It's abstract. I can't paint it a color. But charity is a little bit more concrete. Charity is something that I can visually see. It's love fleshed out in action. And so he's saying, even if I was the smartest person who ever existed and had a secret code to be able to talk with God about, if I don't combine that with love in action, the Bible says in verse 1, I am become as sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. You say, what's that? Hey, guess what you might as well do? Go home, find your favorite pot and pan from the kitchen, throw it down a flight of stairs. Whatever that sound is, might as well be what you're saying to the world. It's just sound. What Paul is saying is, even though I know all of these things and I can impress people intellectually, if it's not combined with love and action, it's just sound. Maybe you've heard it said this way. I think this is a great way, not original with me, but people don't care what you know until they know that you care. What a great thing. That's such a true statement. Man, as soon as you know somebody truly cares about you, then they start caring about what you think and what you have to say. But they first have to know that you care about them. Look at verse number 2. In verse 2, Paul says, "And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains and have not charity, I'm still nothing." So let's break this down even further. You say in verse number 2, he's like, listen, if I understood everything there was to know about God. So let's maximize your intellect in the Bible. 1,186 chapters, broken down 39 Old Testament, 27 New. And you knew everything in there. You knew every single thing in Genesis, all 50 chapters. You knew everything there was to know about the book of Matthew, 28. Hey, let's go crazy. You know everything in the whole Bible. This is what Paul's saying. He's saying, if I have the gift of that, understand every mystery of God there is, and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains. Let me say that for you. If you had somebody come in the back door right now, and he stood up here and he said, listen, I have the Bible memorized. Let's begin. In the beginning, God created, and you're like, wow, dude has the Bible memorized. And you say, dude that has the Bible memorized, that's so impressive. Do you think that we could do this or accomplish this for Christ? He says, I have complete faith in all my extensive research in the Bible and my extensive research in biblical Hebrew and biblical Greek and a couple of Chaldean chapters in Daniel. I know Aramaic. I can figure out all these things. And I believe with all of my research that God absolutely will do this on your behalf. And he has complete faith in it. But he goes out here and he punches you in the face and he talks bad to your wife. You're like, what? Those don't match up. If I went out in Orlando last night and got slapped drunk at one of the popular clubs, which I couldn't name one, but let's just say I did, would you be here this morning saying, wow, give us something? No. You'd be free to leave, wouldn't you? You say, I don't respect somebody who stands up there with the Bible and lives that way. I can't do it. There's a disconnect. And that's what Paul's saying. Hey, listen, you know what? The older I get, here's how I want to live my life. I heard Trey Gowdy. You know who Trey Gowdy is? I heard Trey Gowdy giving a talk at Liberty University, and his whole talk was basically this. You're in school to learn, but there's something even better than learning information, and that is the ability of persuasion. I like that. That's how I want to live my life. It's not just that I can know more than somebody else. It's that I have the ability to persuade somebody else to my side. Isn't that far better? And this is what Paul's saying. If I have all of these abilities and I have not love and action, I'm nothing. So our life application is just simply this in verses 1 and 2. God views my love for another as more powerful than any superpower on the planet. Did you know if you take the time today to love on somebody in this room, that's more impressive to God and more powerful than any superpower on this planet? Isn't that an incredible thought? Let's read on. I want to tell you this story real quick about Sir Nicholas Winton. Sir Nicholas Winton, anybody know that name, by the way? It's kind of an obscure story. This is a guy from Great Britain. Sir Nicholas Winton lived from 1909 and just recently died in 2015. So do the math, he was 106 when he recently died. Incredible story. In 1939, Sir Nicholas Winton was going on a ski vacation, and he lived in Czechoslovakia, and he had access to Great Britain. He's a citizen there. And as he was going on vacation, one of his friends said, hey, would you consider, instead of going on your ski vacation, we need some things we have to talk about. Would you come and forsake that and come talk to me about this idea of maybe helping some people? Sir Nicholas Winton went and talked to this friend of his, and he said, listen, I believe with all my heart that the Germans are going to overtake Czechoslovakia soon, which of course we know they did in World War II. And he said, I believe that the Germans are going to overtake Czechoslovakia soon, and I believe with all my heart all of these Jewish children are going to die. His friend is telling him this and saying, if we can get away, I need your help. You're a smart guy. I need to get away to be able to rescue these children out before the Germans take over Czechoslovakia. As Sir Nicholas Winton started studying the culture and the climate, he believed that it was imminent, that Germany was about to go into Czechoslovakia and take over, and he was going to start murdering anybody that looked like a Jew. He got a little bit ahead of that curve and started getting a plan. He went to the British government and he found out that they would let him bring over refugees, if you want to say it that way, or bring over people that were going to be without a home, And this is what they said. If you have something documented to know where they came from, and they have 50 pounds they can show us, that would give them enough money to get back to Czechoslovakia when they need to, and you have somebody willing to take them in, think about all those criteria, then we're going to let you go ahead and bring over a child. If you have a willing family, 50 pounds to get them back, we'll let you do it. Well, that's all he needed. Sir Nicholas went and found, and he started secretly going through all the homes in Great Britain. He was finding homes to be able to take children. And soon, as tensions began to grow with Germany taking over Czechoslovakia, he began to go door to door secretly, trying to get parents, and listen to what he had to do, talk them into giving him their kids. Tough job. He had to get them to understand, you all are about to die. Give me your kids and I can protect them. Once he was able to secure their children, he smuggled them over the border and got them into a home in Great Britain. Is this incredible? Here's one of the most amazing parts of the whole story. Let me read this to you from a website that's identifying this guy. After the war, Nicholas Winton's rescue efforts remained virtually unknown. Now, I don't know about you, but if this was my story, it might even be in my opening handshake of introducing myself. I couldn't keep this in. Could you keep that story in? Like, what's up? Hey, my name is Ken. It's good to meet you. I rescued a ton of people through some Nazi stuff. It was really amazing. That'd be like my opening. This guy, 1988, the war was over in what, 44? 45? 1988. It was not known until 1988. Here's how his wife, Greta, found a scrapbook. Can you imagine being married to somebody, and years after they've been married in 1988, his wife Greta found a scrapbook from 1939. This should bring tears to your eyes. It did mine. With all of the children's photos and a complete list of names of those rescued that Winton's rescue efforts became known. That's how she found out. She found a scrapbook with all of the kids' pictures in there and all of their names. He never said anything even to his own wife all those years. The story goes on to say that he received a letter of thanks from the former president of the state of Israel. He was made an honorary citizen of Prague in the independent Czech Republic. In 2002, Winton received knighthood from Queen Elizabeth II for his services to humanity. If you go on YouTube when you get home and YouTube his name, there's a documentary about him. One of the things that I always blame it on a huge amount of pollen. But it's not, I'm just crying. That's just, I'm just an excuse. But there'll be a huge amount of pollen in your house too. If you go home and YouTube this guy's name, the UK did a documentary on him, and part of what they did is they brought him into, you got to see this. You got to go home and check it out. They brought him into a television studio and did a whole TV story about this.
I did see that.
Have you seen this?
The name did not ring a bell until you brought that up.
You remember it now?
Facebook.
Yes, it's going around.
Seated in that auditorium.
That's it. That's it. Unbelievable, right? You got to go home and check this out. He's sitting there, and they begin saying to him, this man did all of these incredible things, and they're telling there's about 600 people in this audience, 400, 500, 600 people, and they're all clapping for him, and he's just very, very modest, just sitting there. And all of a sudden, the moderator says, if he saved your life and you happen to be here today, would you stand up? Everybody in the room stands up. They're all old people now. And he starts looking around, and he just has these little tears he's wiping away. Man, that is what Jesus did for us. That's what my Savior did for me. And what we're talking about this morning is loving people past their faults. Listen, you say, well, I don't know, my wife and I just fight. That's what we do. You got to stop. You can't afford it. You say, I just can't help it, man. I just get so angry in traffic. That's got to get out of your heart. That's no part of us. Listen, the point here is that God views my love for another person as more powerful than any superpower on the planet. We've got to love each other. Reading in verse 3, the Bible says this. Paul goes on to say, and though I bestow all of my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. You say, how much does Paul believe in this? So much so that he's saying, if I become a martyr for Jesus, and they light my body on fire, which, by the way, don't you think Paul knew what he's talking about? He had seen that done before. Don't forget, this is the same Paul of Tarsus that we saw in Acts chapter 7 when Stephen was stoned. Remember, Stephen was killed, and when they brought his bloody garments and bloody clothes, they said they brought him to Paul to honor him. Paul was no stranger to violence. And he says here in this verse, he says, and though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, I don't have anything left in my cupboards. And though I give my body to be burned. Listen, folks, if I don't have love for somebody else, I've got nothing. You say, well, Pastor, you don't have any idea what people have done to me. It doesn't matter. You let them deal with them and let God deal with you. I am so passionate about this that whoever walks through those doors, we will love as a church. I don't care what their background is, because they need the gospel of Jesus. I want to be accepting. If they look totally different than us and they do things way different than us, we love them because we love people more than anything else. That's what we need to be passionate about. The greatest measurement of my spiritual maturity is how much I love others. Did you know that? You say, I'm not sure if I buy into that. Listen to what Jesus said. Jesus says, a new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you. Sounds pretty familiar, right? That ye also love one another. And look what it says in verse 35. By this, by what? By our love for one another, shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. Say, how come churches aren't growing faster? Because we don't love each other. This whole world is looking for the answer, and we have it. But they're never going to hear our message if we don't love each other properly. The new mark of spirituality that Jesus gives here, the new mark is the measurement of my spiritual maturity is very simple. How much I love others. See, we as people, we want to measure spiritual maturity by Bible knowledge, or by how much somebody says amen in a sermon, or how much somebody worships the Lord, or maybe the way that they're dressed, or how much they tithe, or how long they've been teaching that Sunday school class, or how long that bus route has been going. And Jesus blows up the whole thing. Jesus completely destroys the system, and he says no longer is spiritual maturity measured by the amounts of sacrifices that you give. It's no longer measured by how loud you are in front of people and stand up for me. It's no longer measured by any of the standards of your dress or anything else. Here's what it's measured by. How much do you love other people? Somebody that can love somebody in spite of being hurt is spiritually mature. If I can love you in spite of things you do to me, and listen, if you can love me in spite of things that I do to you, that makes you spiritually mature. Don't fall for anything else. Verse 4, the very first part of verse 4 says this. It says, charity suffereth long and is kind. We're going to get into other stuff in that verse in a moment, but charity suffereth long and is kind. Kind of like what our key verse is in that word kind. Preferring somebody ahead of yourself. And so it says that charity, this idea of love in action, has two facets to it. The first facet is being kind to somebody in generally a kind way. And the other part of this thing is doing it for a long amount of time, even when it's not conducive to you. Long suffering. Remember, it says in 1 Peter that God is long suffering to usward. Remember, it says that. That he's not slack concerning his promises, as some men count slackness, but is long suffering to usward, not willing that any should perish. The Bible is pretty clear on this issue. And so there's two parts to this. Look at this applying to your life part. I can know that I love others. See, how do I know? Here's how you can know. When I have an opportunity to take vengeance and I choose not to, but rather repay unkind acts with kindness. That's how you can know the mark in your life. When somebody does you wrong and you say, I could get them back. I could say this thing. Oh, I could corner them in this. And they just absolutely contradicted themselves and I could point it out to them. And when you choose to not do that and just repay them with kindness. See, love in action is kind and it suffers long. But look at the rest of the verse in 4b through 6. It says this. It says, charity envieth not, charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth. Here's maybe another way we can say that if you look up at our screen. For me to know when I fail at loving somebody else, I must first know what love is not. So here's a list. We're going right straight through your Bible from 4b through 6. Love is not this. Love is not envious. You know, one of the ways that I really challenged myself as a young guy, I can remember just entering my 20s, and I noticed something God showed me about my life that I saw as a really ugly part of myself. And I grew to hate it and asked God to take this out of my life, and I can tell you, He has all these years later. But one of those parts of my own life that I just couldn't stand about me is I got frustrated when other people got a new car or they got maybe a big raise at work. And I was like, man, everything always works out for other people. And I was like kind of happy on the outside, but inside I was like, man, I wish I could go get that. Somebody get a new house, I thought, oh, I'm so happy for you. And I heard somebody say one time that you need to be happy for others as part of your spiritual maturity is being excited and rejoicing when good things happen to other people. And I thought to myself, man, I had so much conviction. I thought, what is wrong with me that I don't rejoice with other people when good things happen? And then I started seeing all these different principles in leadership books that saying one of the things that will keep you from always being successful is looking down on other people that succeed. Well, you should cheer them on because that means you have hope too, right? It's a different mentality. And I read this verse, and man, I can honestly tell you today that if something great happens to you, I can rejoice with you today. I'm happy for you, and I want to be able to rejoice with you. Man, I'll tell you one thing that love is not. It's not envious. In any facet, whether it's things, relationships, social status, it doesn't matter. Job, love doesn't envy. That's not a loving thing to do. The second thing is it's not proud. The way that the Bible words this is it says that love vaunteth not itself. It means the idea of being proud is literally go back to Exodus chapter 12 in the Passover we just went over and think about when you have a loaf of bread that has yeast in it and that leaven is in it and it begins to puff itself up in the oven, it's air. If I can say it this way, if that's a symbol of sin and Jesus was our unleavened bread, then leavened bread is puffed up because of the hot air. You know what that means? That when sin allows us to look bigger on the outside than we really are, you're full of hot air. It's nothing. I remember I teach my kids this, and I've always said this for our family to understand. When somebody comes across, you're going to meet an individual in your life that's very difficult to get along with. How many of you already are thinking of somebody? Okay. When you have somebody that's very difficult to get along with, and they have an external crust around them as being really tough, and you better not cross me kind of attitude. You know what I've learned in my life? It's not that they're tough, it's that they're scared. How many of you figured that out so far in your life? They're not tough, they're scared. I don't care how much they want to look tough to you, they're scared. And that's the way they manifest is they're trying to project that onto somebody else, saying, if I'm scared, I want you to be scared of something too, and it's going to be of me. But you know what? When you're confident in the Lord, I don't have to project it onto you. When I'm confident in God, I'm just like, Lord, thank you so much for loving me. And I don't need to project toughness. I don't need to try and scare anybody and overpower them. Man, I don't need to try and look bigger than I am. That's not love. That's not loving somebody. It's also not arrogant. How much of a turnoff is it to be around an arrogant person? Oh man, it's just you can learn nothing from an arrogant person because it's such a turnoff. I saw on Facebook recently a side-by-side comparison of Michael Jordan and LeBron James. For those of you who are sports fans, there's a clip of Michael Jordan talking about himself and how good he was, and Michael Jordan went on and on about saying, "Hey, listen, I'm here to play the game of basketball. It doesn't matter to me if I'm considered the best ever. I don't even talk about that conversation because I want to be able to do the best that I can do for my team, and that conversation can be held later. And I just try to make myself the best basketball player that I can be." And then it cuts to LeBron James, for those of you who know him, and he said, "You're not going to be able to guard me because I'm the best player on the planet." And I just thought, oh my goodness. It's debatable which one was better. I'd rather take Michael on my team, but it's debatable which one was better. But I'll just say this. What a turnoff LeBron is for me with that attitude. Now, did Michael think he was the best ever? Yes. And he believes it today, and he probably was. But the difference in that, you know what it turns into? Money. Michael had a more marketable personality, and he's going to make so much more money in the long run because people are attracted to humility. People just repulse arrogance. Not that LeBron's hurting for money, of course. But love is certainly not arrogant. Love is not rude. I think that's probably the opposite of this word here. Would you agree? Listen, I'll tell you what I'm probably the most embarrassed of in my life. When I'm out to eat with somebody or I'm out with somebody and they're rude and I'm in their party. I'm like, Lord, give me the wisdom to what to do right now. I almost want to part ways right there and say, you're on your own, man. If I go out to eat, as an example, or I go out to the supermarket or whatever, this is my goal. My kids have heard me say this. My wife's heard me say this 1,000 times. When I go somewhere, this is what I want. I want for my server to know that we were her easiest table of the day. I want my server to know that when we're there, we're going to try to make their day better. They deal with junk all day long in food service. When you go into Publix and those people have been mistreated all day, make yourself the best customer and the most encouraging customer they've ever had. Drew and I were at Walmart last night, which I avoid like a plague at all costs, but I had to go there. And so Drew and I went there last night, and we saw this guy, this big, tall, black guy, really strong, and every once in a while he would go like this, and he'd just start dancing. And he's by himself. I don't even know if he's listening to music, man. He's just having fun. People kind of snicker in the aisle. Of course, I got my phone out. I can show you this later if you want. I got my phone and I'm like, click. I'm recording. I'm not missing this. And this guy was just dancing, man. He went by and he'd go, yeah. And then he'd go up and nothing. About 30 seconds later, he'd go and yeah. And then he'd go. And I was like, that's one of the strangest things I've ever seen. And then I thought, you know what? That's awesome. That dude is so happy. He doesn't care at all who sees him. So I went up to this guy, and Drew's like, Dad, what are you doing? I had to go up to this guy. He's much bigger than me. I went to this guy, and I was like, I got to shake your hand, man. And I said, I just want to tell you, you made my day from just being happy and showing it. And he's like, oh, that's great. Biggest smile on his face. I'm like, cool, so we're past the point of you killing me. That's awesome. So he's like, that's awesome. And I gave him a little hug, and I pounded him in the chest. I don't know why I did that. I was like, good job. Anyway, but I saw him in the parking lot. Drew and I saw him in the parking lot. He's going to his car. He'd stop in the middle of the road. He'd let go of it and just like, woo, and then he'd just grab his car and go on. I thought, if I could only be a percentage of that happy, that is awesome. And I would have had to shake this guy's hand. It was so amazing. He was so kind. I went to him and had to encourage him. Not cliquish. Oh man, we got to love everybody. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Not touchy. Isn't it difficult to be around people that are overly sensitive and everything revolves around them? And if you say it just the wrong way, oh man, are you in trouble? Love is not suspicious. Love doesn't look for all the bad. Love is not trying to see where people mess up and do a discovery on when people are messing up. Love doesn't do that. Lastly, love is not happy with evil. The Bible alludes to this in Romans chapter 1, that it's not around people that are swift to shed blood and happy with those that do it on their behalf. All right, let's move on. Verse number 7. Paul concludes with this thought: love beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Let me just say it this way as you look at the screen. For me to engage in love properly, this is maybe one of the hardest things of the day. Then I must be willing to cover the faults of others. Let's just stop there. What if you made it your goal in your house? Let's just start in your house and the people that live under your roof, okay? We're not trying to change the whole world around. We're trying to change your house. And you have the power to do this with this thought this morning. Once you get your house down, then bring this into the church, and we need it in this room too. But you just work on your house this morning and get this down. What if you made it your goal to cover the faults of everybody in your house? The idea of the word cover here has the idea, if you look into the Greek and kind of look into it, the idea of the word covering here has the idea of building a deck, has the idea of building something over something. So the idea here is that you build a covering over the faults of other people, and man, you get your screw gun out and you start screwing down big planks of wood over the faults of others so that you never bring it up in discussion. You don't hold it over their head to show them how wrong they are. But what if we just did this in our home? Hey, every time somebody in my house messes up, I'm going to cover it with the best of my ability, because my goal is for the people in my home to absolutely look the very best that they can. What if we did that? For me to engage in love properly, I must be willing to cover the faults of others and look for the good things that God may be doing through them. What if you were to look at somebody who continually messes up, and rather than looking at them and say, what a disgrace to humanity, you could say, hey, I'm going to start praying for God to bring a revival to their heart. I'm going to be looking for the way that God's going to use them. This is the one thing that Sarah and I talk all the time about our kids. We say that all of the major giftings of God in personalities can also be our downfall. Like my ability to be able to stand in front of you this morning, most of you know, what you're seeing here is all I have. I don't have notes this morning. That's just my ability, is to be able to teach the Bible God's given me. But don't you understand that when I was in high school, I had this same ability, but I didn't use it for the Lord? I had the ability to off my feet to be able to verbally destroy someone? Don't you know God had to get a hold of my heart and bring me into subjection and break me and destroy my pride and say, Ken, now I'm going to use your abilities that I gave you for my kingdom, no longer to talk trash on the basketball court, no longer to try and hurt people with words. I'm going to use that same gifting I gave you and try to build up people. And he got a hold of my heart, and here I am. Don't you know I can see the same abilities in my children in different ways and think, boy, if this hard-headedness, right, can be used for the kingdom of God, there's no stopping this child. That's what I'm saying. Be able to look at the faults of other people and say, what are the good things that God could do through them? With their own God-given natural ability, the things that bother you to death, you could say, man, if God got a hold of this area, I'm going to start praying that way. I'm going to start praying that this stubbornness I deal with this person, maybe God could use that to further his kingdom. He needs to get a hold of their heart. I'm not suggesting we ignore things with this. You understand what I'm saying? I'm saying once we deal with it in our hearts, be able to not bring up faults again after it's dealt with. Once again, we're just kind of closing here. Here's our big idea this morning we've been talking about. God values when we love each other more than when we complete actions without any love for each other. God would rather you do less in actions for him and take the time to love other people. Before you go to your car today, hug on someone, say, listen, I'm praying for you. How can I love on you? He values that more than if you do busy work for him and exclude love from your life. So this morning, as we're diving into this new sermon series called Family Ties, I hope that you take the time to maybe take this home, think through it, and know that we're going to start looking in detail on what the Lord has us to do in our own home and how that's going to then be a healthy transfer from the principles in our own home into making our church even healthier.